In Madison, Wisconsin lately, we've seen what, shall we call them old school public sector employees do? But how could life in government be different? What does the government employee of the future look like? Well, I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, and with me to take a walk on the sunny side of the street where nobody's chanting "kill the bill" is Bill Whittle, the co-founder of DeclarationEntertainment.com, coming to us from PJTV's mothership in Los Angeles, and from high above the fray in Monument, Colorado, our host of Hair of the Dog and the Weekend Blogs, the vodka pundit, Stephen Green. Well, Bill, by any measure, public sector union relations with the taxpayers have been, shall we say, adversarial? The Wall Street Journal reports that last spring, a New Jersey teachers union spent $300,000 per week on a radio campaign urging higher taxes and more government spending. A New York State teachers union spent $750,000 opposing a cap on property taxes. Last year, the SEIU and the NEA spent $3.4 million backing a new income tax in Washington state. Now, Bill, how would you change the public perception of union bosses as money-grubbing thugs?
First thing I'd do is make those facts well known. I'd make it well known that public employee unions make significantly more, almost half as much as the private unions. I'd make it clear that the individual families, including union members who work for private unions, are forced to give up their vacations and their goals for large screen TV, let's say, or their children's education in better schools. All of these things have to be surrendered because of the higher taxes that they are forced to pay at gunpoint in order to pay these people who don't have to give up anything, won't give up anything, have no desire to give up anything, and use these thuggish tactics in order to get their way. I talk about the Iron Triangle, where these people force you to join a union in a non-right-to-work state. Just think about that, by the way. How American does that sound? There's a right-to-work state and other states where you don't have a right to work. But where you don't have a right to work, you have to join a union. They take your money from your paycheck. They use that money not for strike funds, but to spend on political campaigns, to elect Democrats, to get them everything they want. It's locked into the legislation, and if you or the country and everybody else goes bankrupt paying it, then hard cheese for you guys. That's the true narrative, and we need to counter this narrative with a consistent narrative, and that narrative happens to be the truth.
Well, any hope that Bill Whittle had of nailing that contract as the SEIU's PR director has just gone out the window, I'm sorry to say. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker and the taxpayers he represents face a $137 million biennial deficit on pace to grow to $3.6 billion by 2013. He wants to bump a union member's share of his own health insurance premium to 12.6%, about half the national average for such workers, and as we pointed out on another episode this week, roughly 86.4% less than mine. And Governor Walker wants to limit their collective bargaining rights just to salary issues, require a referendum for pay hikes bigger than the cost of living, or the CPI, and limit contracts to 1 year. Okay, Steve, I am now going to make you the union boss of the future. Remember now, this time, things are going to get better. How do you respond to the governor's move?
You know what? I don't think I can take that role. It's just, for all the reasons Bill just said, it's too distasteful. So instead, I want to address what the governor's doing, and the only thing I can say is it's a step, and it's really a small step. We need to reframe this issue. I keep reading about this right to collective bargaining in these stories, and just on the face of it, that's absurd. Rights and collective go together like scotch and breakfast, or Lohan and Mensa. Rights belong to individuals, and we need to remind people of that night and day. And as a purely practical matter, when a public union employee negotiates, or when the union negotiates with politicians, they're really just arguing about who gets how much of our money. It's an example of Friedman's fourth kind of spending other people's money on other people, where you don't care about cost or quality, and that's why the DMV can suck and suck you dry all at the same time. So, sorry, I didn't answer your question. I answered my own.
I'll keep trying. I'll soldier on. Hey, Bill, union dues can average for public sector employees in the neighborhood of $800 to $1,000 per year, and the government automatically deducts them from the employee's salary and sends the check to the union. Is there a better way to fund all of the fine work that public sector unions do? Gaze into your crystal ball at the union of the future.
I'll take his question about being the boss of the union of the future. I am now disbanding this public sector union. Now, I'll wait a few moments for the gunshots, the rotten tomatoes, the bricks, and various objects being thrown at me to subside. I'll wait a month or two. And then I'll say this. Our ability to go to taxpayers for more and more money, to continue to raise taxes in order to meet demands and in order to meet the interest on these demands, causes the tax rates in the state of Wisconsin to reach a point where businesses will no longer do business in Wisconsin, and they'll go someplace like Texas where they don't have this kind of nonsense. So, in order to preserve all of our jobs that I've been elected in order to represent, I am disbanding the union. I am going to negotiate for the best deals that we possibly can that allow the state of Wisconsin to operate fiscally responsibly and lower the tax rate enough so that companies come to Wisconsin, because if companies come to Wisconsin, we have jobs. If we don't have jobs, it doesn't matter how many demands we make. We cannot do this forever. Thank you and good night, and I'll be found at the bottom of a river the next day.
Hey, love those shoes, buddy.
Thank you very much.
I was
They're
in
large
a
and made of
local
cement.
government building. I was actually in a local government building today, and there were paper signs taped to the doors that said that they would be closed on President's Day, which was yesterday. Now, I told the deputy who was x-raying my jacket for weapons and perhaps spare change that he might want to remove those out-of-date signs from the doors, which were about 10 feet away from him. Without missing a beat, he said, "That's the maintenance department's job." So, Steve, how does your government employee of the future approach his job differently, and why would he do that?
Well, let me tell you first, have you ever seen a union contract? I mean, physically seen one? Let's put this picture up. I found this. I'm not sure which one this is. I think it's a UAW agreement. You can see a Coke can there next to it for scale. It makes Obamacare look like haiku. See, it's not just pay and benefits. It's who gets to do what, who has to do what, and who can't do what. And the goal is always the same, to make it impossible for anyone to take any kind of initiative and to make more union members to fill out each little carefully designed workers' niche. And you know what that is? That is feudalism. We're in a 21st century economy, and we have a market for public labor, which is essentially feudal. So I guess what I tell the government worker of the future is, welcome to the 13th century.
I guess I hadn't considered the possibility that if the guy peeled the sign off the door, he could have a grievance filed against him. You're probably right.
Oh, yeah.
Bill.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
Bill,
yeah.
How can Republicans reach out to rank and file public sector union members and convince them that the employees' best long-term interests are what we have at heart, and that we have a plan to prove it?
I just point them to California, where you can see that as more and more taxes are raised, more and more companies flee the state. As more and more companies flee the state, taxes are raised ever higher to make up for these demands that the unions have that cannot be negotiated away because they're law. You point to the graveyard spiral and wait for the state to collapse, and then you say, there you go, do you want that to happen? You know, the sad thing about this is these people make more money than those of us in the private sector, and everybody knows that they don't work as hard. I'll switch a couple of Teamster jokes that you hear on the set of every single movie ever shot to SEIU jokes. I'll just give you two of them. How tall is the average SEIU worker? No one knows. No one's ever seen one stand up before. And what happens when an SEIU, how do you know when an SEIU worker dies? He drops his donut. This is the nature of the people that we're fighting with, and we cannot allow these people to continue to control our democracy at gunpoint.
Well, Bill Whittle is co-founder of a privately started enterprise called DeclarationEntertainment.com, where you get to join in the cultural revolution. And you can get regular and essential doses of Bill's wisdom at billwhittle.net. Well, Steve, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, gave $43 million to federal candidates in the past 20 years. The National Education Association, $31 million. The SEIU, with more than 1 million members who work in government, gave $29 million in campaign cash. They're all in like the top 10 givers in federal campaigns. 95% of it, by the way, goes to just one party's candidates. And that's just the federal campaigns. But how could the public sector union of the future ever stick up for its members' rights without, buying politicians?
Oh, well, they can't. That's why I called Governor Walker's plan a small step. These public service unions, they have got to go. They get taxpayer money to ask for more taxpayer money. They've got no skin in the game except for, greedy little fingers. So our ultimate goal has to be the elimination and prohibition of public service unions. And you know what? The public has never been so ready for it. We seem to be understanding the stakes, but they know the stakes. They know what happens if the dam breaks in Wisconsin. We're already seeing some cracks, so we can't let this moment slide. Next stop, Indiana. See you there.
Stephen Green shocks and awes on a daily basis at vodkapundit.com. You can follow him on Twitter at vodkapundit and watch his weekly shows exclusively here on PJTV.com. Well, I really do believe there's a better future for public sector employees, but it will take some serious rethinking and a basic change of attitude all around. The key to it all is freedom. Government employees should be free to refuse union membership. Government should be free from serving as a collections agent for union dues. And union bosses should free themselves from the corrupting collusion with candidates that leads to one-sided contract negotiations between elected officials and the unions that help elect them, leaving the taxpayer without any representation. Government employees deserve a chance to love their jobs, to give their all, to earn what they're individually worth, and frankly, to jettison the slackers who drag everyone down. Well, perhaps some union boss watching this will have an epiphany and then go back to work to transform his local into a value-adding, voluntary association of excellence whose members will be in demand in the labor market, private or public, rather than stomping, clapping, and chanting in the streets, offending the very citizens they aspire to serve. For Steve Green, Bill Whittle, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV, I'm Scott Ott.